Good afternoon and welcome to this Funding Your Studies webinar today at Keele University. My name's Rena and I'm from the undergraduate student recruitment and access team. And today I'm joined by Abby from our student financial support team. So Abby, what is the student financial support team at Keele?
So the Student Financial Support Team is a team that sits within Student Services, and we're here to advise students on a range of different money-related problems that they might have while they're at Keele. That could be that they're experiencing some problems with their funding, it could be that they want to learn more about bursaries and scholarships, or it could be that they just want to know more about what's available and how to make the most of their time at Keele.
Fab, thank you very much. And we're going to be covering a wide range of some of those topics in today's webinar. So we're going to be looking at things like full-time, undergraduate UK funding, living costs, budgeting and financial support. Now, even if the funding element isn't relevant for you, there are going to be elements of this webinar today that will be relevant for everybody. And there will be an opportunity for you to send your questions through, and Abby will be answering those live today. Now, we do recommend that you don't send through any personal questions or questions with any of your kind of personal circumstances, as we wouldn't be able to answer those today. However, we'd recommend you send those through to the student services team, where they'll be able to help you in a more tailored way. But we are happy to answer lots of general questions and give you a bit more insight into what it's like living and studying here at Keele University. So kind of starting off with something that I know is quite important to students is obviously recognising that going to university can have that significant cost and trying to think about the best ways to balance it for everyone. So bursaries and scholarships are one of the ways that lots of students will look to kind of supplement their income. So Abby, can you tell me a little bit more about the bursaries and scholarships here at Keele?
So at Keele we have a range of different bursaries, scholarships and support funds. They do differ, like many universities, between undergraduate students and postgraduate students and between UK students and international students. So when you are looking online on our website and you're looking for information about our bursaries and scholarships, make sure that you're looking at specific ones for you. And make sure that you look for your specific year of entry as well. They can differ between different years of entries, and so make sure that you're looking specifically for the year that you'll be starting your course at Keele. You can have a look on our web pages for all of the up-to-date information. There are lots of information on there around bursaries and scholarships, but you can have a look around our support funds as well. Because we have recently launched our new Access and Success Fund, which is a new fund designed to support UK undergraduate students who come from a range of different key groups, so that we can help to provide funding to help you make the most of your time at university and get the most of your university experience.
So with that new Access and Success Fund, Abby, can you give me an example of some of the things that students have and could apply for as part of that?
Yeah, so there's not really a limit on what students can ask for money to contribute towards. And it could be that you're looking for money to be able to support you to buy a new laptop, to support you with your course. It could be that you're needing a little bit extra money to be able to help you to engage with societies and sports, to help you make new friends at university. Or it could be that you would really benefit for some subscription services to help you to relax at the end of a long day of studying. There's up to £1,500 available in each academic year. You can have a look online at the eligibility criteria to see what you can ask for a start, in terms of the various different things that you can apply for money for. Also, you can have a look at the testimonials from previous students that have received money from the Access and Success Fund and the impact that's had on their university experience.
Great, thank you so much, Abby, and hopefully really useful to those prospective students who are watching today. So moving on to thinking a little bit about budgeting. Now, I'm a little bit older than some students who may be joining us here at Keele in the new academic year, but budgeting is a life skill that lots of students sometimes take a little bit of time to get right. It's not something that I know anyone gets right on their first time, and it can be a bit of a learning curve. So what support is available for students who need a little bit of help and if they're kind of struggling to manage their finances?
Well, like you said, budgeting isn't something that comes as a skill that we're all born with. It's something that you absolutely develop over time. And even the best budgeter in the world can come across things that you couldn't have ever planned for while you're studying. So it is really important that you take some time to plan your budget and plan for how you're going to manage your money while you're at university. If you are having any problems in, for a start, making your budget, or problems once you start trying out your budget and trying things out in terms of managing your money practically, then you're more than welcome to contact our financial support team at Keele, and we can help you with a financial wellbeing check, which is a free and confidential service that we offer for our students to help you to create a budget that works for you. You know, a lot of the time, if you Google how to make a budget, it will be very generic. It will be very, you know, based on the average student. But we all know that everybody's different. So when it comes to making a budget that's right for you and one that's going to work for you, then make sure that you make use of our services if you are coming to Keele, because we're here to help and we want to be able to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I work with lots of young people in schools and colleges across the UK talking about budgets. And often students forget things like maybe planning to pay for their mobile phones or kind of sometimes the toiletries and essentials, that people forget that shower gel doesn't just magically appear. They've got to purchase it as well. So those types of things that you've got to kind of account for that you may not have done so before. So we're very much kind of looking forward to trying to help you through those. So thinking a little bit about kind of extra income as well, Abby, we know lots of students do get part-time jobs. Do we have any part-time jobs available here on campus that students can supplement their income with?
Definitely. So we have a range of different part-time jobs on campus, and that can be ranging from working in some of our food outlets, working in the bars in the student union. We have a range of shops on campus as well. So there's lots of different opportunities on campus for students to get involved in. There's also lots of job opportunities in the local area, and as much as Keele can sometimes feel a bit like a bubble, a bit kind of set aside from the busy city life, we are very, very close to Newcastle-under-Lyme and Stoke-on-Trent. So Newcastle-under-Lyme is around 5 to 10 bus journey away. So it's very close, and there's lots of jobs available in the town centres, with the range of shops that are available there. So I think we have quite an abundance of opportunities. We also have a specialist service with our careers and employability team, and they're there to help you to not only focus on your career after university, but also help you with part-time jobs, searching for them and applying for them while you're at Keele.
Fab. And I know that some students, prospective students, might already have a part-time job. I'd always encourage students to talk to your current employer, particularly if they're a big chain, and see if they have a local store that you could transfer to. That is an opportunity that we recommend students look into. But as Abby's just mentioned, loads of opportunities here on campus and opportunities with our careers team to explore the kind of right new job for you in that kind of thing as well. So we mentioned budgeting and we mentioned a little bit about Googling, and obviously we use that a lot as kind of day to day. But how can students start to prepare themselves for those budgets and before they arrive at university now?
So as much as the kind of generic information that you can find on Google can be for, as I said before, the average student and isn't necessarily tailored, it is a really good place to start. So if you're looking at starting a budget and just looking for ideas of how much things might cost when you get to university, if you have a look online, you can find information from surveys nationally conducted with students to find out more about average living costs. Every year, a company called Save the Student run a national survey called the National Student Money Survey, and that surveys students right across the country at various different universities, just asking them essentially how much do you spend on a variety of different living costs during your course. And there's some really, really useful information that comes from that so that we can understand more about how much the average student spends on living costs. So you can have a look on there. The results do change year on year. So when you're having a look, make sure to look for the most recent results. And at the moment, the most recent results are 2023. We do also have on our website a downloadable budget planner that you can download for free. And it's quite intuitive in the way that once you start putting in your estimations of how much you're going to spend on various different elements of living costs, it will start to give you suggestions about if, for example, you've estimated that you will spend a lot more than what the average student spends on food and groceries, then it will show you a suggestion to perhaps reduce that down a little bit.
Wow, that sounds really fantastic. And thinking about kind of spending, I know as well, lots of banks now sometimes give suggestions and hints to their kind of owners about where their spending habits are and what their spending insights are. So do students have a good bank that they can kind of apply to, or their student bank accounts that students should be looking into?
So generally we find that a lot of students will get a student bank account while they're at university. You don't have to get a student bank account, it's completely up to you. But what we tend to find is that there are generally quite good deals available with student bank accounts, particularly when it comes to things like arranged overdrafts, which can be a really useful kind of a thing to fall back on if there was something unforeseen that comes up while you're studying. So there are a range of different bank accounts available for students, as well as normal bank accounts as well. The best time to look is generally over summer, just before you start, because at that point you will start to have your confirmations of your place at university. And that's the point that you would need to kind of provide that evidence to the bank for a student bank account. Generally, you'll need to provide a letter from UCAS, for example, to be able to get that student bank account. But when you're looking for a bank account, the most important factor isn't necessarily how much arranged overdrafts you could get, how long you can have the overdraft for. It's always going to be how best can you manage your money.
Fab, thanks, Abby. And kind of leading right into that, really, thinking about, are there any kind of good budgeting hints and tips that you can share based on your work with current students and maybe even the things that you've kind of worked with over the past few years?
So I think there's a few different budgeting techniques that can work really well for students. What we know is that with student finance and the way that your maintenance loan is paid, particularly for our undergraduate UK students, the student finance maintenance loan is paid in 3 instalments across the year, and that can be really difficult to manage, especially if your regular bills and payments will be monthly or even weekly. It can be really difficult to budget an instalment across, for example, 3 or 4 months. So some of the most useful techniques for budgeting would be something called piggy banking and something called drip feeding. So with piggy banking, that's a technique where you can have multiple different bank accounts or pots within a bank account, for example, with Monzo or Revolut type banks. And essentially, when you get your student finance, your maintenance loan, you split that up into the different bank accounts. One bank account could be, for example, for food and groceries. One bank account could be for your rent and your bills. You could have another bank account for leisure and going out and socialising. And then you essentially just spend from that specific pot, which means that if you've spent all of your allotted money for takeaways, for example, you're not then going to be able to start dipping into your bank account that's set aside specifically for food and groceries or for rent. The other technique, drip feeding, which is really useful for students, is to have perhaps just 2 bank accounts, and that can be sometimes a little bit easier because sometimes having multiple different bank accounts can get a little bit confusing. So if you just have the 2 bank accounts, you can have your maintenance loan paid into the main bank account, and then you can set up a standing order to send a certain amount either every week or every month over to the other one. The main bank account that has the bulk amount of your maintenance loan in, put that bank card to one side, don't really touch that, and then use that other one, which means that at any one time you're only having to manage either a week or a month's worth of money in one go.
Those are some really fantastic tips, Abby, and actually something that's really kind of, again, gives you that spending insights, gives you that understanding of where your money's going. And again, as Abby mentioned earlier, as students, sometimes there's unforeseen things, or as we said at the beginning of this section, it is a learning curve. It is something that at the beginning you might be spending a bit too much on takeaways or a bit too much on your socialising, and then you're like, right, okay, I do need to balance this out and think about things in different ways. So those are really good techniques as well. So moving into our second kind of element of this webinar, starting to think a little bit about living costs really. So of course, Abby mentioned earlier the National Student Money Survey and how different kind of areas in the UK or different universities will have different costs. So thinking a little bit about those costs specifically here at Keele, how much do students kind of pay for on-campus accommodation, Abby?
So at Keele, we have got a range of different accommodation types, and they come with different price ranges. There's also different accommodation lengths as well. So for some students, it might be easier to stay on campus throughout the summer. Perhaps if you have a longer course length, such as nursing courses are typically a little bit longer. But other students might decide that they just want the basic course length, so that once you finish in May, June time, that's the point at which your accommodation contract would end. And the different room types really does make a difference when it comes to planning for your budget and how much things will cost. So at Keele, we have got our kind of standard rooms all the way up to our ensuite, premier ensuite accommodation rooms as well. So make sure when you're having a look online, take into account how much maintenance loan you're going to be receiving, take into account how much you're going to be able to afford on accommodation before you start making your choices of which accommodation type you would prefer.
And thinking about accommodation, we know sometimes students get a little bit worried about applying for accommodation. Do we have a guaranteed accommodation scheme here at Keele?
Yes, so we do have guaranteed accommodation for first-year undergraduate students who select Keele as their firm choice. So if you are planning to study at Keele and you would like to have that guaranteed offer of on-campus accommodation, make sure that you pop down Keele as your firm choice on UCAS just to lock that in.
Fab, thank you. And what about thinking about off-campus accommodation? So we've got a lot here on campus. If a student's thinking about living off campus, is there a good range locally for them to consider?
So especially over the past few years, we've seen quite a lot of investment in the local area in off-campus private student accommodation. So we have got a variety of different organisations locally that offer student accommodation. If you have a search on Google for Keele off-campus private accommodation, you'll be able to find all the different opportunities that are out there. Most of those are in Newcastle-under-Lyme, which, like I said earlier, is 5 to 10 minutes on the bus. And you can get an annual bus pass, which would save you a lot of money over the year. So it can end up, saving quite a lot of money.
Fab. And we've already started thinking about a key expense for a lot of students earlier on, food. It's key. We've got a lot of great catering outlets on campus, but are there any cheap places as well to buy food on campus and in the local area that students often kind of frequent?
So we have got a co-op store directly on campus within our student union complex, and the co-op store stocks a range of different food items and also kind of your toiletry type items as well. So if you're running out of shower gel, you can always nip down to the co-op and get some. In the local area, we have also got in Newcastle-under-Lyme some budget supermarkets such as Aldi and Lidl. So if you're looking to do your big shop, then there's lots of different supermarkets in the local area that you can have a nip down to on the bus.
Fab. And I know often you can sometimes see things like discount cards or things like that. Do Keele students get access to discount cards?
So there are a range of different student discount opportunities. As a student at Keele, there are a few different types where some are paid and some are free to access. So there is the totem card, which lots of students tend to invest in. This one is a paid card, but it generally has slightly better discounts generally. But there are, like I said, a lot of free options as well, and the main ones being Student Beans and Uni Days. And these are free apps that you can download on your phone, and you can have a student ID on there so that you can show it in store, and also you can get discount codes to use online when you're shopping online.
But all the while thinking about that budgeting and how much you've got to spend in those online places as well. And how about if students are thinking, if we've got a student who's from a little bit further away and travelling home, are there kind of discount cards there that students should be considering?
Yeah, so there's a range of different rail cards that are available. Most of our students, if they were looking to purchase a rail card, they would be kind of getting the age bracket related rail cards, but they can save around a third of the cost of rail travel, which can make a really big difference.
Fab. So before we move into our next section, just a reminder that if you have got any questions about living costs, budgeting, or funding, as we're just about to cover as well, please do send them through on the chat and we'd be more than happy to answer those as we go along. So thinking about a bit more about funding, obviously we know there's kind of different elements to going to university. There's the tuition fees. We've kind of mainly focused more so on the maintenance side of things, so the living costs so far. But can you tell me a little bit more about who can apply for student finance and kind of the process there?
Yeah, so student finance has a range of different eligibility criteria. There's a criteria of age, there's a criteria of nationality, residency status. And so if you have a look online, you can search for student finance undergraduate eligibility criteria and you can find the full list. Some of it, especially if we're looking particularly at nationality and residency, it can get a little bit complicated. So make sure that you have a look down to make sure that you do meet the criteria. But you can have a look online as well around the different types of student loan. So at the moment, there is a Plan 5 loan, and this is the Plan 5 student loan, but you will also find different plans and information about different plans online. And those plans could be, for example, Plan 2, it could be the postgraduate loan, for example. So when you are looking for information, and especially about eligibility criteria, just make sure that you're looking for the specific year that you're going to be starting that course to make sure that it's the right information for you.
Fab. And student finance applications, are they open yet, or are we still waiting for those?
Yes, so student finance applications are already open for September 24 entry. So you can have a look online. If you search online for apply for student finance, it will probably be one of the top ones, if not the top one. And then you can go ahead and start that application. The sooner you do apply is the better. It can take quite a while to process a student finance application. So if you can start that application now, then that will be better in the long run for you.
So you mentioned starting that now, but what if a student hasn't made their decision on their firm or insurance choice yet? Why is it better to start it now than after they've made that decision?
So you don't actually need to know for definite where you're going to study or what you're going to be studying in terms of your course. When you apply for student finance, you do need to pop down a university and a course that you think you're going to be studying at, but that can be updated at any time. The important thing is to actually get that application in there. The main bulk of that time that it takes to process an application comes from you and processing you as part of the application, whereas the course and the university that's on there, they can be kind of updated just very quickly later on. But it can take quite a while.
And I think sometimes as well, depending on the documentation that you need, if it's going to be supported documents, sometimes we all lose track of our paperwork, don't we? So it's key to start getting an idea of what you might need to supply for that information as well. So kind of speaking of that information, what kind of information do students need to complete an application, Abby?
So to start the initial part of a student finance application, all you would need is your basic information. So information about you, where you live, your contact details, and generally your passport number if you have a passport. And generally, a lot of that information can then be gathered kind of automatically, really, from that passport number. It seems to be kind of rare that you're having to send in a passport these days. It's all online and all digital now. So it's very easy to kind of start that application process off. If you are dependent on parents or guardians for purposes of student finance, so if you're aged under 25, or if you're aged under 25, but there are specific circumstances, you might be considered for independent status, but generally if you're under 25 you'll be considered dependent on parents or guardians. You'll then have to provide their contact details as part of that initial application, and they will be contacted and asked to provide their national insurance numbers so that they can essentially assess you for household income if you decide to be assessed for the higher level.
Fab, thank you. And thinking about how much students receive, so how much can students receive from student finance? Is there an average or is it different?
So when you apply for student finance, you apply for kind of the basic level of maintenance loan. And that level is the same for everybody. It doesn't matter what your household income is. It does differ slightly if you're going to be living at home with parents or if you're going to be living away from home. And it's a little bit higher if you're going to be living in London while you're studying as well. But generally that base level is around £4,500. If you decide to apply for the higher level of maintenance loan, providing your household income details to do so, you could then be assessed to receive up to around £9,500. There is sometimes additional elements that you can apply for on top of that, such as the special support element. You could be applying for the adult dependent grant, for example, and that can kind of increase the amount you get. But generally, we're looking at between £4,500 and £9,500 per year.
And is there anywhere students can look online to get an estimate of how much they could potentially be receiving?
So online, you can have a look at the Student Finance Calculator, and that's on the government website. So if you just search for that on Google, you'll be able to essentially put in your information and get quite an immediate response in terms of an estimate of how much you can receive. So generally, we find that that's very accurate. It will ask for some basic information about you, about the type of course that you're going to be studying, and then it will ask for estimations of what your household income is, and then it will pop out a number that you can then use to base your budget on, really.
And thinking about budget as well, we kind of mentioned this earlier, but just to clarify, that maintenance loan, when students do get a payment, it isn't a lump sum, is it?
No, so when students get their maintenance loan, it's typically divided across 3 payments across the year. So you will get the first payment if you're starting in September, the second payment will usually be January, and then the third payment will usually be just after you return from Easter vacation.
Fab. And you mentioned kind of adult dependence grant, but are there any other additional funding that students might be able to access via student finance if eligible?
Yeah, so there's a range of different additional financial support elements available from the government depending on your circumstances. So if you have got an adult dependent on you, then you can apply for the adult dependent grant. If you have children and you're going to be studying with children, then you can apply for the childcare grant, which can provide funding for 85% of childcare costs, which is, you know, really significant support there. But you can also apply for the Parents' Learning Allowance, and also if you have a disability, you can apply for Disabled Students Allowance, and that can provide funding for a range of different things to support you during your time at university with your disability.
Fab, thank you. So that's come to the kind of close of the vast majority of our comments. So again, if you've got any questions or any insights that you'd like to know about kind of living, studying and being here as a student at Keele University, please do send them in. We'd be more than happy to support you with those. So thinking a little bit more about kind of the services that your team offer, Abby, what's on a bit of a day-to-day, some of the different queries that you might come across from a range of students?
So generally we'll have a lot of queries around student finance and funding, particularly at this time of year when people are starting to reapply for their funding. At undergraduate level, it is something that you have to reapply for in every year of the course. So at this time of year, that tends to be quite a common query, is around student finance. But generally, there will also be a lot of queries around managing money. You know, like we were saying earlier, it's absolutely not a key skill that we're all born with. It's something that is, you know, trial and error over time, finding a way of managing your money that works for you. So a lot of our time is spent in supporting students to manage their money for a way that works for them, and for a way that's sustainable for them as well. So generally that's day to day what we get up to, along with processing our bursary scholarships and support funds.
Fab, thanks Abby. So hopefully you found this information helpful in today's webinar. So we've covered, as I mentioned, a little bit about bursaries and scholarships. We spoke a little bit about budgeting, the living costs, and also finishing off with those kind of funding questions and information as well. So we really hope that this information's been helpful for you and kind of thinking about those next steps with making decisions about studying, hopefully here at Keele University. Now, if you do have questions following on from this webinar, you can get in touch with Student Services and Abby's team. team, and they'd be more than happy to help you and guide you on this preparation for your studies here at Keele University. If you're visiting us on the applicant visit day on Saturday this week, Abby and her team will be available in the marketplace to answer queries as well. So we want to make sure that you have that information and awareness to be able to make an informed choice. But thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for this webinar, and we hope you have a lovely rest of the day, and we look forward to seeing you at Keele in September.